Sure.
Give me a little background on you guys personally.
Okay.
And then how you got involved in the band, in the Lazarus Complex.
Oh, okay.
Joe, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. So I'm Joe. I write guitars, bass, and drums. Kind of all started out of spite back in 2012 when I was in a band and they broke apart, and I was like, you know what? I can write music all by myself. And next thing I knew, it was I sat down. I was like, all right, I wrote a bunch of guitar. I'm like, well, I don't know how to play drums. I got to learn how to play drums now. So I learned how to play drums to be able to back up what I've been writing. It wasn't actually until about 2 years ago I met Jake, it was about 2 years ago we met. There was a band that we both really liked called The Anchor, and we both know them on a good personal level. And they ended up staying at my place when they went on their first U.S. tour. And they're like, I was like, oh, where are you guys playing next? They're like, in Jersey. It's like, cool. Well, I'm not doing anything. So I jumped in my car and followed them to Jersey. And I met Jake at that show. And it was really cool. But that's how we met. But so I started Lazarus Complex a little bit out of spite because I wanted to be able to write my own music.
Right.
And I still wanted to be able to write that extremely heavy, yet like that faith background, like Impending Doom or A Plea for Purging. You know, that's always been one of my biggest inspirations to be like, I want to be the heaviest Christian metal band out there.
Cool. Okay. Jake?
All right, so just listening to what you're saying about where you're located, I actually grew up in Texas. Lived there until I was about 23. Yeah, I lived southeast of Houston.
Okay.
Grew up in this neighborhood called Friendswood. So real.
Yeah, I know where that is. Yeah,
real
I
white
used
boy
to.
background.
I lived off Katy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Katy Lane, right off of 10, I guess. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, yeah, I was there till I was about 23. Moved out to New Jersey at the start of 2013, chasing something that didn't work out. That's where I'll leave that. And still really wanted to do music. So on and off, I pursued different things. And then come down to 2018, Joe and I meet at that show. And part of, I think, what helped him single me out was I was actually doing a guest spot. It was an impromptu guest spot during the band's set. So they pulled me up and had me scream a song with them. So that's kind of how we got started. And then a year later, he's telling me about this whole project he's got for an album. And so he's like, hey, I'd like to have you at least on one song because I got all these different people I'd want on these different songs. So started working with them, started laying out these demos, which then shortly turned to everything.
Right. So. Okay. All right. So you guys virtually do everything pretty much at this point.
At this point, yes.
Before all the craziness, did you guys hook up in one area and record stuff, or has it always been kind of a virtual thing?
It's always been like that, actually. There was only, we were talking about this earlier. There's one instance where I was over at his place that we started working on demos, and that was really the only time we worked on stuff together in person. The rest of it's just been digitally this whole time.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's basically, I have a band and that's what we do. Nice. We've been doing digital stuff, but ours, we started during the pandemic.
Wow.
It came out of that, actually. But that's pretty cool, man. So you guys have been doing it even longer. So basically when all this stuff went down, it was like a regular work day for you.
Yeah.
But we kind of took the opportunity we looked at the situation and it was like, okay, we're not really going to be looking at playing live shows right now. Yeah. So why don't we use this time to improve on parts of our sound that we want to strengthen up. And so he and I started taking lessons. I took on vocal lessons and production lessons. He took on guitar lessons and drum lessons. And you can hear the change and shift like from the first album up through what we've got now, just in terms of music quality.
Right. How old are you, Jake?
I'm 31.
Okay. And how old are you?
29.
Okay. All right. I'm 48. So I'm like a generation ahead of you, I guess you could say. What sort of music do you guys listen to, and who's your favorite artist? Or I mean, who would you say would be if you had to pick a favorite artist, who would you narrow that down to? Joe.
For me, it's a little difficult because I adore music. If I were to, I always label it down to if I was to pick one musician that I would listen to the rest of my life. That's kind of how I build it. But it's Devin Townsend, because he writes anything from something that's like super ambient and beautiful to heavy metal and everything in between.
Yeah, definitely familiar. I know who he is. Yeah. Yeah, and he's very impressive. He's a great musician.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've only read a few little articles with him and stuff. He seems pretty down to earth.
I ended up seeing him live back in 2012, and it was one of the most mind-blowing shows because that was when he first started doing his solo tours.
Right.
So it was like I was in a hole-in-the-wall venue, my chest up against the stage, no barricade, no security. And it was like one of the most intimate metal shows I was able to go to, and I was like, I want to be this man.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. It's crazy when you hear the differences between like what he does. Like you listen to Strapping Young Lad, and then you listen to what he's doing now, and you're just like, whoa.
This is the same guy?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'd narrow down my hugest, well, I don't know if hugest is a word you'd say. My biggest influence at stepping into it as a vocalist was definitely Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage. Like,
cool. Okay.
I'll be a lifelong loyalist to them, only seconded by Demon Hunter, which I notice you're wearing their hat.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Demon Hunter. I'm a huge fan of Ryan and Don. I've known Ryan and Don since Focal Point.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean Ryan. I met Ryan when he was in Focal Point. I used to book shows in Austin.
Okay.
And they went on I think it was their one little tour they went on. Solid band, man. But yeah, Ryan and Don are great guys, and I actually just saw Demon Hunter right before the pandemic.
Oh man.
It was the tour they were doing, the double tour, or the an evening with Demon Hunter thing. Did you see that?
I missed out on that completely just because of my work schedule, and I don't think there were any East Coast dates on that tour.
There wasn't.
Oh yeah, there wasn't, was there? Yeah, they played Dallas, and it was I definitely saw it, but I've been a fan of theirs for since the beginning. But I love Training for Utopia.
Oh, dude.
I was a huge Training fan. I booked their tour too when they toured that one time. But great guys, man. Great guys, and very talented artists, and just in general.
Yeah.
And I appreciate their Christianity and the fact that they've stuck with it.
Yeah.
It's very cool. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Demon Hunter.
Yeah, Demon Hunter was that. Also, just a lot of the early 06, I guess you could call it not even 06, like 02, we're talking progenitors of what we call metalcore these days, like the real original guys. So you've got your Demon Hunters, you've got your Killswitch, you've got your Zao, for example. Zao was one of those that really got me into doing the higher sounding screams at first. Just over time, as my interests have grown and changed too, it's just implementing those highs and lows and the combinations of them. That all roots back down to Killswitch Engage, Zao, and Demon Hunter.
Cool. Zao, now, so did you like obviously, did you play catch up with Where Blood and Fire? Was that kind of like you were playing catch up on that? Because you said 02, 03. That's like 97, 98, 96.
Yeah, so I caught on to Zayo right around Funeral of God era.
Okay.
Like that was when I first heard them, and then I purchased their, I think it was the self-titled album. Yeah, that's where I first heard songs like The Buzzing,
Right.
Parade of Chaos was
Parade
the
of
name of the album.
Chaos, right. Okay. So
That's
you
when
basically, you picked up on them in their, like, how they, the guys in the band now.
Basically.
Yeah, because Funeral, Jesse's not on that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't
Right?
think he was really on that by that point.
Yeah, okay. All right. So you picked up on all the stuff like post Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Their The Fear That Keeps Us Here albums is definitely one of my all-time favorites, just because it has such great, like, a combination of that screeching heavy that they're known for, but when you sort of put that vintage filter on it,
Yeah,
that old school sound to it, it just took it to like a whole different mood.
right. That's Steve Albini doing that.
Yeah.
The producer guy. That's pretty interesting. I find it interesting that you latched onto them like in their second generation or like post Jesse, because most people, again, I'm 48, so that's why. I mean, I was there when they started, and man, I'll tell you something right now, dude. If you haven't seen the video of them at Cornerstone in like 97, when they were playing like with, I don't know, I think it was Where Blood and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
There's a video of their Cornerstone performance of that.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I was at that show. And when you saw those guys for the first time with that lineup, it was absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, it was, I would never change that. It was so special, man. Because, I mean, it was something that had never been done before. I mean, you just like stood there going, what is happening here, man? This is something totally, totally different.
Yeah, I do dip back into their older stuff, like when I did first start listening to them and started going back through their catalog. Like Ember was one I really latched onto because I grew up in a very conservative Christian home.
Right, me too.
And yeah, so like hearing bands that were, it's a weird thing because a lot of performative stuff out there kind of paints this perfect image, but to have people of faith expressing like this rage, this anger, but it's still edification, that really hooked me in.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely something that they were latched onto from the very, from that period. The period before that with Sean was definitely completely evangelical, as far as that goes. But yeah, I had the opportunity to see both of those tours. I saw the Sean Jonas tour, and then I saw them play Where Blood and Fire, that first tour. And it was, I can't even, man, dude, it was mind-blowing. I mean, because you didn't know what you were going to see. There was no internet, I mean, I figured this dude was just going to sing the same stuff, and then they go into this Carcass thing, and you're just like, what is going on here, man? Yeah, it was crazy. Hey, tell me a little, Joe, about your background, because he was telling me a little bit about the background, like him growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, tell me.
So a little bit about my background. It was very similar. I grew up in a very, like, I was a cradle Catholic. So it was like, I grew up in that very kind of just faith was always very important in my family. Sure. And one of the big things for me too was, as I was growing up, my dad became very sick when I was very young. So probably about by the age of 10, I watched him, unfortunately decay, to the point where he was unable to walk and he was bedbound. So it was just, kind of like a sad childhood, I guess. But it was, I don't mean to put on the sad here.
No, that's cool. I mean,
but that was a big thing for me, was kind of music was an escape for me. And it was kind of that was the moment where I was able to kind of just, I guess, like cathartically and vicariously live through somebody else's pain, I guess, through my own. And it wasn't until about 2008, right after my father passed, was when I found out that like Christian heavy metal was a thing. Because, you know, it was like, to me, like the heaviest Christian people out there was like Skillet or 1,000 Foot Crutch or Pillar.
Right.
And it was like, don't get me wrong, I love 1,000 Foot Crutch. Like, I've been listening to them since Phenomenon. I love them. But it was like my mom, who doesn't like heavy metal at all, so it's really funny that I'm like in this direction. One of her coworkers said, check these guys out. And I got a Becoming the Archetype album for Christmas. Yeah.
Those guys.
Which one did you get?
Terminate Damnation.
Okay.
But I remember, and I was like, the first song started, I'm like, okay. And then it was just like, got into that blast beat, that's ba, 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 ba. And I was like, whoa. These guys are a Christian band. There's like such thing as this heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the moment I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah, those guys are solid, man.
Yeah. And so it was like, from that moment, it was like, after that, I found out was, I'm trying to even remember, like I got like Haste the Day. I ended up actually getting into them at that cusp where like Jimmy was meeting like Stephen Keach, like kind of that weird divide where it was Pressure the Hinges. That was the album I got introduced to them. So when I went back and I was like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yep.
And that's when I kind of fell in love with those like really high vocals, was like going back to listen to Jimmy from Haste the Day, and kind of a really weird deep cut of a band is Beneath the Sky. They weren't a Christian band, but it was like their first album was kind of, and then they kind of went off the deep end a little bit. But it was kind of like, that was the moment I was like, wait, you can have these crazy vocals too and not just be all angry. Like, you can be emotional about something. I don't know. It was like that was a weird year for me to discover heavy metal, to be like, it's not all just angry music.
Right.
And it kind of like sucked me out of that real hard time with my father passing there.
Right. Cool. Okay. All right. Do you have, okay, I'm going to get into some kind of weird questions because I like to like cross-pollinate here.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have, I'll ask you first, Joe, since we seem to be in that realm.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite superhero?
Okay.
If you're into that sort of thing. And
so,
if so, why? Why are they your favorite?
So I've always loved superheroes. Like, I remember waking up super early on like Saturday mornings and watching Stan Lee talk about like Iron Man and Spider-Man, like right before he aired a cartoon.
Right.
And so it was like, I've always loved superheroes, but it wasn't until like the Netflix series of Daredevil, and I started watching that, and I was like, whoa, this is a real intense superhero who's so ingrained in who they are and their identity that it's like they would not compromise themselves to save people. So it was like, he, with the whole internal struggle of, you know, murdering people, he doesn't. And so it was just like somebody who's that, he knows who he is even in those hardest moments. And I was like, I love this. Right. And it was just, I've fallen in love with Daredevil, and then going back and reading the comics from there. Right.
Yeah, I like the. I haven't watched that.
Oh, it's so good.
That's one of the ones I never have been able to watch. My wife is way into superhero stuff, but when it starts to get like real gritty and dark, she doesn't really get into that. She doesn't like the new DC movies. Which honestly, I don't really care for them either. I like the more lighthearted ones. I like dark stuff. You know, I love the Batman Michael Keaton movies. I think they're awesome. I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but there's something about the Snyder ones. They're just mean. to me, they just don't. It doesn't feel like the superheroes I know.
Feels a little pessimistic to me, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, what I was impressed with, because my son showed me, was when the Punisher came in to Daredevil.
Ooh, yeah.
And that stuff, man. He would show me like the parts with him in it, and because I love the Punisher. And when or I love the stories, like the movies. I haven't really read a whole lot of Punisher stuff, but yeah, that stuff on the show for Daredevil, that stuff was way, way more graphic and way more violent than the movies, which is insane. Because those movies are violent, especially that Warzone one. That Warzone one, man, was like super violent. But yeah, cool guy. I met John Bernthal. Nice guy.
Nice.
Yeah, nice guy. You, Jake.
You. That's gonna be my name for the rest of the interview.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I have a bad habit of pointing and going you.
Well, that's your job as the interviews. You gotta point. So I grew up as an Incredible Hulk kid.
Cool. Okay.
Really hasn't changed all these years. I didn't really understand it at the time because I was more impressed with kind of like it was the 90s cartoon that really got me into it at first. It's not really propagated as a fact, but if you listen to it now, knowing his voice, Lou Ferrigno's voicing the Hulk in that series.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Now, like you listen to his voice inflections and how he says words in that cartoon series, and then you listen to Lou Ferrigno and it's like, he's on there, but it's not widely credited.
Interesting.
So Lou Ferrigno, like because I don't know if it was my grandmother or my mom had a series of it. We had a tape, like it was the pilot movie for the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
So one thing I've learned to myself growing up is a lot of my interests tend to fall into like contrasts. Like you have, like in Christian metal, you have this super dark, brutal, raging sound, and yet the words ring out with a lot of truth or confrontation against evil or that kind of stuff. So really seeing the contrast between weak Bruce Banner and the Hulk was really interesting to me.
Okay. Have you read like any of the new stuff like Immortal Hulk?
I keep up with like posts from it now and then just to see like where the story's headed, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty horror.
Yeah, I've seen some of the art. It's pretty horror influenced.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, because I'm into horror, so I mean, it's cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's okay. That's cool. All right. If you had to choose one movie or TV series to watch, what would it be?
Scrubs.
Nice.
Cool. Okay.
Nice.
That's interesting. That is not one that I get usually. Usually it's The Office or Parks and Rec. Which is cool because I'm way into that. That's just interesting. Okay.
It's just a really well done show for the first 8 seasons. I didn't really stick around for 9th when it was still up on Netflix, but like it was just.
Are you talking about the one where they start doing their teaching?
Yeah.
It's actually not too bad. Have you watched it since then?
I haven't watched it since then. Like I think Scrubs went away from Netflix and I canceled my subscription a little while ago. So,
right.
So I haven't really dug back into it.
Cool. Okay. What about you, Joe?
That's a good question. I haven't really been keeping up with TV too much, but because I have a newborn son, so typically my day is cycling through Disney movies. But from there, it was going back, and it was actually just started rewatching Ed, Edd n Eddy, because it was that's a show I could go back and watch over and over and over, as it was like some of the comments too. Now that I'm older, I'm like, that's like actually a really kind of ridiculous thing. I don't know, like some of the weird stuff people got away with saying in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and compared to what it is now, nobody batted an eye back then.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I know what you're saying. Definitely. I watched a show. Man, what was that show? But it was, I can't even remember now. I might as well drop it. But it was, I do know what you're talking about. You're just like, how did they get away with that?
Right. It wasn't even like dirty or like provocative. It was just like such a weird thing that they would say, and you're like, huh. Like, I don't know. It's like it's one of those silly cartoons that's kind of shaped some of the weird stuff I'll say, like the Edisms, where Ed would be like, how come my feet smell but they don't have a nose? And I'm like, ridiculous thing, yeah. Right. I was like, oh, now I understand why I'm so weird.
Right. So what about like a movie?
A movie. If I were to pick a movie, my problem is if it's a serious movie or not a serious movie. I have 2 movies I watch every year without fail, between Big Fish and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Those are my all-time 2 favorite movies.
Okay. Big Fish. Somebody else said that the other day.
Oh gosh, that
movie
I
interviewed. They said Big Fish was their favorite movie. That's interesting. Cool. Very cool. Okay. What about Jake?
I'd have to say Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the first one.
Cool. Okay. Are you excited about? Do you like the new Godzilla movies?
I love them, honestly. There's so many fan nods in there just to like the past and stuff, and they put a lot of work into giving these creatures a lot of personality too. That I've noticed. Again, I've been watching this stuff since I was a wee lad. Like I have a whole collection in the other room too. So
right, yeah. I thought the new ones were pretty cool. The Gareth Edwards one, it was okay. I did enjoy I liked King of the Monsters quite a bit.
Yeah, King of the Monsters was great. And my thing on the Gareth Edwards is, they kind of kept a lot of it obscured leading up to the final fight. But once you were on the final fight and like that first long roar hits, like you knew you were in for the brawl. So
right.
I don't know. Right. To me, I think it was smartly toned.
Sure. Right. Would you, I guess I don't really even need to ask this question, but would you consider yourself a religious or spiritual person? And how does that affect your career choices? Like inside and outside of music?
Well, yeah, I didn't see a point, so that's fine. Joe.
So in music, it's kind of, I take kind of everything that's going on around me and kind of just try and channel it through. Like one of my big favorite stories is like Matt Greiner of August Burns Red. He loves the tale of Jonah. So I sat down and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and read the tale of Jonah. And it was kind of, I take a lot of, similarities where he told God, no, I'm not doing a thing. And he's like, okay, fine. I'm going to have a giant fish eat you. And so you can sit down and reflect and see, I have a better choice for you in the future. Just trust me. And so it's kind of, I take that with my music of everything that's going on in my life to kind of push into that. And then same thing with career choices where outside of like when I've worked my regular day jobs where I'm met with some really intense ethical decisions and I've walked out of jobs. And I said, I'm not doing this.
Right. Okay. Jake?
Well, for me, definitely along the same, I don't really have the same story as Joe where he's kind of heard stories and gone back through it. For me, it's been a lot of ups and downs where I've had moments where I've definitely questioned it, but I found in the times where I've questioned, it's led me to dig into the reasons why I believe, and it's more like reaffirmed it and just life circumstances that have come around, and you look back at, and now I say like, yeah, that was totally God working at that. As far as it affecting my career choices, right now, I'm 7 years into a job I started back in 2013 since I moved out here. And the way my faith informs my actions and the way I conduct myself there is definitely more about just acting with integrity and owning up to when I do things wrong, because the environment I work in is very critical. it has a lot of government and aerospace contracts involved with it too. So, and to be an inspector for that, you have to have a conscientious mind to be able to do the right thing when you see something that's like, hey, this could be bad, but they're pushing forward through production. You know, you got to be able to have the grit and the faith that everything will turn out God's way when you have to say, no, like, I can't let this through.
Okay.
Okay. No worries.
So, last question. Tell us a bit about the latest project or the latest song you're working on, whatever you're doing, you know, promoting, song-wise. Or with Lazarus Project in general. What's going on? Complex. Lazarus Complex. Go ahead.
Long story short on that one, because it's a bit of a long story. We have 5 singles we put out this past year. 0017, The Hollow, The Deceiver, The Defiler, and The Redeemer. We're putting that all together on an EP for the end of January here. Okay. So it's going to be a story, beginning to end. So all the tracks should run into each other and be a complete story. Okay. Long story short on that one, too, it's about, you know, the story of how, you know, God saved me. Okay. And then from there, too, the track that I sent you is Burn, which is going to be coming up is the first full track off of our next album that we want to release for like a summer release.
Okay. Okay, so this is separate from the EP that you're about. Well, I mean, the EP you've been doing, like releasing the singles for.
Right. So we have a full album that we're actually going to be dropping with a couple singles leading up to that. But Burn will be the first full track for the new album coming out.
Okay. And is that going to be released as a single? Or are you going to keep doing things the way you're doing them?
We haven't figured out which singles yet. We're probably, Jake? We're probably going to do Crooked Man and Kaylee, or are we going to do Crooked Man and I don't know.
So, just to divulge just a little bit, I actually went out on a mountain at this abandoned castle and filmed some stuff for Remember You Will Die.
Yeah, that one too.
Yeah, that one's one we're probably going to push out as a single music video, since it's already filmed. Then Crooked Man is another one I think we were heavily leaning on.
Yeah.
And more than likely Kaylee. Yeah, Kaylee's Law.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, are you going to release them? Like, is Burn going to be released?
Burn's going to be released with the album.
Yeah.
Okay. So it won't be available till the album actually comes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what,
right.
If there's a line there. Or I mean, when it's going to be, you know, what the plan is as far as that goes. So I guess there is one thing I forgot. You got Jason singing on The Redeemer.
Yeah.
How did that come about real quick?
Want me to give him the short version?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So when we first started writing for the Hollow series, we'll call it, Joe had this whole list of people he wanted to be on the tracks. So like he had Mystic for the Hollow.
Yeah.
We had another friend lined up for the Deceiver. Didn't quite work out at the time, but for the special release, we're going to have some friends on there. And then for the Redeemer, straight from the get-go, he wanted Jason Wisdom. And so it just so happened with everything going down with the pandemic starting and all that, like Jason was looking for extra ways to bring in some money because I think it really affected his job in terms of touring.
He's a teacher. Yeah.
Oh, it affected his job big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was offering to do like vocal spots or lessons, that kind of stuff. And so we had
Right. Yeah, Jason plays bass on our first single. My band's first single. Nice. It's Alar. My band's name is Alar, A-L-A-R.
Uh-huh.
And the song was Pandemic. It's an industrial project. And he played the main bass line in it, which, in my opinion, is very pinnacle of a song. He tapped out like a Nine Inch Nails type like vibe of bass, and I was like, whoa, okay. I think he did it in like 10 minutes, man, when I was talking to him. But yeah, I've been talking to him for a while about death therapy and stuff. But yeah, he ended up doing that. So yeah, man, I'm very familiar with Jason in death therapy and such. So that's pretty cool. Okay. His vocals, obviously strong as they always are.
Oh yeah. When we first got the raw track, dude, we were blown away.
Right. Yeah. What about that song made you want him to be on it?
I wanted a voice that was only way I can ever describe Jason's voice is it's like thunder. And I wanted a vocalist I knew who was like thunder to come crashing in that song. And I was like, the only person that I know is around that has a very distinct thunderous voice is him.
Yeah. I agree completely. And it definitely works in the song completely. Cool. Okay. All right. What do you want to talk about the song Burn here that I'm going to put on here? Because basically what I'm going to do is I'll put the clip at the end.
Okay.
So do you want to talk about that? What's it about? What can they expect from it? That sort of thing.
So the long story short about Burn is I've gone through some extreme, intense personal life issues this past year, 2020. We'll get more to that another day. Yeah. I think 2020 just exasperated it and pushed it, just to be something that would come out sooner than I think it was going to happen anyway, but I digress.
Yeah.
And it's, I wanted to write an extremely intense, I don't know, a short song that was kind of very new Whitechapel-y, like Whitechapel from the Valley.
Cool. Okay.
And it was just, I wanted something that was just so fast and raw that was like, this is exactly how I feel. So it's like, it's very hard for me to bring that up. It's a very angry but direct song without being malicious, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. Did you I'm going to talk to you about it in a minute because it sounds like you're the production guy, Jake. What did you do differently on this song than you've done in the past? Both of you. I'm sorry, but yeah, you can. Both of you.
So differently on this song, I think I'm playing around with a little more tonality in my voice. If you listen to past Lazarus Complex recordings, a lot of my mid-sounding growls are very, very samey, very Jason inspired, if we're going back to Jason Wisdom, quite honestly. Since I started working with the voice coach a couple months back and just working on it on my own, I wanted to play with different resonances to match the aggression of the album. Because a lot of the themes and that Joe has flowed down to me for this album, and then it's also painted by my own personal experience. So we were both dealing with things along the same lines at the same time. But like he said, it was probably more eventually that was going to come out. My circumstance, starting 2020, I was completely blindsided. So it took me a little while to really process and come to terms about that. And as far as the lyrics and the performance in Burn itself, the lyrics are a little more painted with what I was dealing with at the time, what kind of bubbled under the scenes there. And so the lyrics reflect that, but in a more vague way,
So do you both write lyrics?
I've written the majority of them.
I was going to say 99% of them is Jake.
So who sings? Okay, so you play guitar. Okay, I'm trying to get balanced out here. Joe.
Yep.
What do you do?
I write all the music. So I do guitar, bass, and drums.
Okay, and then you, Jake.
Yes. I write all the vocals, and last summer I took over the production end of it in terms of mixing, mastering.
Okay. And so you record everything for him. You send it to him, to Jake, and then Jake puts it together.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. I just wanted to make sure that I knew what the dynamics were. So what did you send me? What did I receive? Is it 30 seconds, a minute, the whole song?
It's about 30 seconds of the song.
Yeah, it's about
it's
40.
Yeah, about that much. And this is still very early stage in the song's development.
Okay.
It's got written out vocals that I recorded myself. They're processed, so they're like less, I guess, raw. So, but you still get like a good idea of what it's going to end up sounding like. But right now, it doesn't have all the elements in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I still need to record bass for it.
Okay. All right. Now, is it a video or is it audio?
It's audio.
It's just audio, but I can also send you the.
I'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute. In closing, is there anything you guys want to close out with, Joe?
Oh goodness. Keep an eye out for this big EP that we have. We have some big special guests, like we have Mystique, who's the piano player from Australia who does covers. She's on there. We have a couple other big friends on there. Keep an eye out for 2 or 3 singles coming out. We have a crazy big special guest that like I've dreamed of working with, since I was 16. He's going to be on Kaylee's Law, so keep an eye out for him.
Okay. Anybody you can talk about, or are you keeping that under wraps?
Keeping that close to the cuff.
Yeah, it's I can tell you this: when you see who it is, you're going to be like, no way, he's pretty cool.
Cool. All right, Jake.
I'm on the same page as Joe. Just keep an eye out for the stuff that we're working on. We try to keep as busy as we can on our socials. I run the Instagram, he runs the Facebook and stuff. Every now and then you can catch us doing live streams on he live streams on the Facebook. I do streams on Twitch, like Wednesdays and Saturdays. And sometimes that will include us working on like newer songs, doing live playthroughs of older ones too. So we're keeping fairly busy with the band in terms of just keeping our stuff out there. And we are grateful, like super grateful for everybody who's just come on and listened.
All right. Well, thanks guys for talking to me. And we're going to play the clip after we close out here.
Awesome.
But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
All right.